Today's daf, Be'ezras Hashem, is Masechta Avodah Zarah number 70. Daf, daf 69. Samach Tes. And we will start from a little bit towards the bottom of Daf Samach Chesem and Beis. About 5 lines from the bottom. So basically, the Gemara is saying over here like this. We just learned a story of a mouse that fell into wine. And so one would think they pulled out the mice. It's in the kosher wine. The mouse, which is something that you're not allowed to eat, would asr the wine. Rav said that the wine is asr to drink. Now, why is that? Wouldn't the taste of the taste of the mouse detract from the taste of the wine? So and that's called noisin tam lefgam. So why did Rav aser it? So the Gemara was dealing with that before. Nevertheless, it's aser. So the Gemara says like this: Amar Rava said, Hilchasa, the halacha remains. Noisin tam lefgam mutter. If something would fall into, an isser would fall into an item and detract from the taste, so then the item is mutter. If assuming the heter is roiv more than the isser, if the isser just gives a bad taste, it detracts from the taste of the heter, so then the whole item becomes mutter. So the question is, v'achbara b'shikra, says Rava, the case of the story with a mouse falling into wine, lo yadana my tama de Rav. I'm not sure why Rav said it's aser. It could be imashum de ksavar, because Rav holds noisim tam lefgam aser, that even if iser would give a detracted taste to the whole thing, nevertheless the item is aser. V'leis hilchasa kavasei. And the halacha is not like Rav. We paskin that anything iser that gives a bad taste into the heter, so then the item is mutter. Or imashum, it's possible. We're on the last line. The ksovar Rav holds noisin tam lefgam mutter. If it gives a bad taste, then the item is mutter. Achbara b'shichra, but the reason why the mouse in the beer, I'm sorry, it's the mouse in the beer, ashbuche mashbach. It enhances the flavor of the beer. There, it was enhancing the flavor of the beer with the mouse in the beer, and therefore Rav said it's aser. Now the Gemara asks the question, Ibaylahu. So we're on the last line. Now we go to Daf Samach Tes Amar Aleph. Ibaylahu, let's make this bigger. Let's say the mouse nofal l'goy chalo mai. If the mouse fell into vinegar, what's the din? Amalei Rav Hillel. Now the question is like this: do you say that vinegar is such a sharp taste, so therefore the dead mouse or the sherets, whatever it falls in, cannot alter the taste of the vinegar, and therefore it's kosher, and therefore you could use the vinegar? Amalei Rav Hillel Rav Ashi have a uvde be Rav Kahana. This story happened by Rav Kahana. Let's say a mouse fell into vinegar. V'aser Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana said that the vinegar is aser. So we see that even though the mouse fell in, and maybe you wouldn't even feel the pungent taste of the because the vinegar is too strong. Nevertheless, Rav Kahana made it aser. So that was Rav Hillel telling over the story to Rav Ashi. Amalei, so Rav Ashi responded, perhaps ahu imratute immartat. The reason why Rav Kahana asered that vinegar is because there were pieces of insect, or there were pieces of the mouse still in the vinegar that could not be sifted, let's say. And therefore, Rav says it's also because you'll swallow a piece of the insect, of the sherets, and even if it's the size of a little lentil bean, you did something wrong. You chayav malchus. Therefore, Rav Kahana said it's aser. But it could be if a whole mouse fell into the vinegar and you pulled out the mouse, so the sharpness of the vinegar would prevent the mouse from detracting from the taste of the vinegar, because the vinegar is so strong, and therefore perhaps Rav Kahana would say it's mutter. Says the Gemara, Ravina Sava L'Sha'ura B'mei V'Achat. Ravina said that if a mouse falls into vinegar, you need 100 to 1 ratio in order to make the vinegar mutter. Amar, because Ravina saw to himself, Legaram et Truma, it's not any different than Truma. The Tran, we learned in the Mishnah, Truma, let's say a Truma apple, Oila be'echad me'eya, would only be nullified only if there's 101 or 101 against it. 101 ratio. So if there's 101 apples against the one apple of Truma, then mixed up, then you can eat the whole mixture. So Ravina thought that since we find a very high mixture of 101 ratio by something that you could eat, like truma, so therefore we'll apply it over here, that if a mouse falls into vinegar, then you need 101 ratio. Amalei Rav Tachliva bar Gaziza Ravina, so Rav Tachliva bar Giza said to Ravina, Dilma kitavlin shal truma b'kedera dami v'lei botol tamayu. Maybe when a sheretz or a mouse falls into the vinegar, it should be like spices of vinegar that fall into a dish. The loy bottle tamayu, we never get rid of that taste. It's always there. So maybe we should say that if a sheretz falls into, if you want to be strict, you could say that it never gets bottle. It never gets nullified. So Rav Achai shir b'chala b'chamshin. Rav Achai made the shear, anything falling into vinegar, all you need is a ratio of 50 to 1, less than the normal Isser. Because vinegar is strong, and whatever is going to fall in there, you're not going to taste it. Rav Shmuel b'reit Rav Ika shia b'shichra b'shiten. Rav Shmuel said that if a mouse falls into beer, all you need is 60 to 1 ratio. The hilchasa, the halacha is idi v'idi v'shishin, whether it's vinegar, whether it's beer, whether any isser, we always say the ratio is 60 to 1. V'chein kol isurin shebetayra, any isser in the Torah that falls into, again, normally we would say all you need is a majority, but since you can still taste the isser, Rabbanan said it's still usser, unless it's a 60 to 1 ratio against the Isser that fell into the heter. Says Rashi, that this all applies, except with this all applies by min b'sheini minoi, when the item of Isser is not the same type as the item of heter. It's two different items. For example, let's call kosher wine into lakshan. So it's two different things. But if there's one item, min b'mina, so if there's one item, let's say one non-kosher meat among, so who we paskin, doesn't matter, it's always aser. Because according to Rashi, all Isurin in the Torah, min b'minoi, it's always going to remain aser. And the b'shein b'minoi is, and by Chometz and Pesach, min b'shein amino, Chometz us, because of the Gezerah, ein amino atom. We always apply one rule by Chometz B'Pesach because of the Chumrah of Chometz B'Pesach, because there's if you eat Chometz B'Pesach, to Minoi or Ein Minoi, it's all one rule, it's always Aser. Now we go into another Mishnah, where the Mishnah discusses Isser Yayin, should you be concerned when you leave wine alone with a guy? We know if a Jew puts his hand into the barrel of wine, the wine becomes Pesach. Or if the guy would lift up the barrel of wine and pour it, that's Yayin Nesach. Rabbanan said that even if the guy touches it, it's Aser to drink, Aser for a Jew to drink that wine. So now we have a problem. Nachri Shahayamavi, a guy was hired by a Jew. Shahayamavi im Yisrael kadiyayim amakam lamakam. He was carrying the barrels of wine belonging to a Jew from place to place. Now the barrels presumably have a mini cover, like a cork cover that you can easily pop open. So im hoya becheskes hamishtamer. So if the yid is always nearby and the guy is scared to just pop open the cork top and stick his hand into the wine, so then the wine is mutter. The mutter, even if the yid is not always there, but the fact that the guy thinks that he's there or that he could show up at any minute, so the wine remains permitted. But im hoidia, now here, if he notified the guy, shuhu maflig, that he's going away, so now the guy thinks he has time to do what he wants with the wine because the yid is not coming back. So the shear that the yid has to go, um, and if he didn't come back in this period of time, then the wine is usher. What's the shear? What's the amount of time? Today, that would be amount of time to give the guy enough time, sheyish time, that the guy should bore a hole into the barrel of wine, the yis time, and you bore a hole from the top, and then bore a hole into the cover of the wine, the yistim, and then close it up, the yigoiv, and let your whatever you're closing it up with dry out. So so let's assume that's 15 minutes. If you're 15 minutes away, then the wine is also, and only because you told the guy you're leaving for a long period of time. So if you come back after that 15 minutes, you come back 20 minutes later, too late. The wine is also. So the shear is to make bore a hole into the top of the wine and close it up. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel is a little bit lighter. He says the guy would never bore a hole into the top of the wine, into the cover of the wine. The best he would do is, because he's afraid he's going to get caught, because even if he bore a hole into the top of the seal of the wine and he closes it up, when the yid takes off the seal, he'll see from the of the cover, so he'll get caught. Maybe from the top it looks good, but from the bottom it doesn't look good. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says because of that, a guy is not going to do that. He says the shear is kadesh yiftach hasachavias. The guy should open up the barrel totally, take off the cover, v'yigoif, and make a new cover, v'tigoif, and have that cover dry. So that's a longer period of time. It might take 2 hours to do something like that, and only then is the wine aser. Mishnah gives you case number 2, which is similar to the other cases. If a yid leaves wine in a wagon or a boat, and it's docked, and he went on a shortcut, he went into the city and went to take a bath. So now the guy is alone on the boat with the yid's wine. Mutter, the wine is permitted, even though maybe the guy can, pull the boat away and then touch the wine. No, mutter. Im haidia shumaflik, if he let the guy know that he's going to be a long time, right, in the city. So then kadesh yishtam b'yista v'yigav. Then we have the shear of the guy to bore a hole into the top cover, close it up, and let it dry. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, Rab Shimon says the shear is longer, so that he should be able to undo the cover, make a brand new cover, and let that dry. So again, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel is more makel. Third case, which is a similar machlokes. A Jew has a store, and he has a goyish worker in the wine store. Even though he goes out and comes in, mutter, the wine is mutter, because the guy wouldn't touch the wine knowing that his boss could come in at any minute. But if the Jewish boss, told the worker, I'm going to be out for a long time, the shear is that as long as if the guy had enough time to make a hole, close it up, and let it dry, then the wine becomes aser. The shear is a lot longer. He has to take off the top of the cover, make a new cover, and let it dry. Now, the Mishnah says if a guy invites a goy into his house and there's wine on the table, Jewish wine on the table, you invited a goy to come to your supper. You put jugs of wine on the table, and there was little wine in a bottle in the small table far away from the main dining room table. But it's like a wine uh, a tray, so to speak, far away from the regular dining room table. And then he went out and he came back in. Mashallah shulchan, whatever's on the table, all the wine on the table is asar, because the guy has permission to drink the wine on the table. You invited him for supper. Shal hadul baki, but the wine that was in the little cabinet on the side, that's mutter. That's mutter because the guy wouldn't do that, have guts enough to take from that wine, only the wine on the table. But if the host said, the Jewish host said, have a moiz v'shaisa, take what you want, dilute the wine and drink. So afal shal dulpiki aser, even what's in the wine closet, or the cabinet there, is aser. Now, chavius pesuchais, if you have in the wine closet barrels that are open, asuris, they're aser right away. Because the guy he feels he has a free hand to go take anything. Stumas mutaris. But if they're closed, then they're mutter. And the shear is kidei yiftach v'yiga v'tiga, that he should have enough time to undo the seal, make a new cover, and dry it out. Like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says the Gemara. What is considered that we can assume that the guy is always afraid that the Jew is watching over him, so he's not going to touch anything that he's not supposed to. Tanya, we find another thing, similar idea. If a person's donkey driver or his employees were carrying his taharas, and he wants it to remain tahar, if he distanced himself a mile away, his taharas are tahar. We don't assume that his amaretz workers are going to spoil his taharas because they always know their boss is right behind it. But if he told his workers, go in front of me, va'ani ba acharechem, and I'm going to follow you. So kevin shenas alma einoi mehem, as soon as he can't see them anymore, taharosav tameas, then all the taharas become tame, because we assume they touched them. Says the Gemara, Maishana Reisha, Maishana Seifa. Why is in the beginning his taharas are tahar, but they're touching it, they're carrying it, his workers are carrying it. Maishana Seifa, do we say it's tame? The Reisha should also be tame because his workers who are tame are carrying the taharas. Amar Rav Yitzchak, Rav Yisrael says, Reisha b'tar chamarav upoyalav lakach. It's talking about his workers went to the mikvah, so they're not tame. Ihachi Seifa nami. If they end, then what's the difference if they went at a distance in front of him? They went to the mikveh, so they're not tame. So the Gemara says, when they're far away from the boss, ein ama'aretz makbet amaga chavere. We're not worried about them, but they might invite their friend to touch the taharas. So therefore, the taharas are tame because they might invite a friend. If so, if they're inviting friends to touch the taharas, so even if the boss is just a mile away and did not tell them that he is far away, we should always say that the taharas are tame because he's very friendly workers. They're going to invite their friends to touch the taharas. Amar Rava said, we go to some base. Amar Rava said, when he could show up suddenly and they don't know where he could come up from a curve. So they're never going to let their friends touch it. Hachi is safe and then that's the end of the right. So why don't we say the same idea that he could come and show up just like that? The answer is since he told them, take a while, you just go out in front of me and I'll follow you. Some could tell you the workers feel comfortable that their boss is not there, and therefore in same idea in the Bryce. to be there all the time, to watch the wine all the time. His worker thinks that he could show up at any moment, then the wine is not is mutter. But if he told the worker, I'm going to be out for a while, so then we have the machlokes. How long does he have to be out in order for the wine to become tamei, to become aser? Is it enough that he should be like 15 minutes out, where it gives enough time to the worker, to the guy worker, to bore a hole to cover and drink from the wine and do something to the wine, and then dry it back up, cover up his tracks? Or do you need much more time, enough time for the guy to take off the cover, uh, plaster another new cover on and then let that dry? So that's much more time. But either way, if you're out for a long period of time, the wine will become aser. But if the guy doesn't know how long you're going to be out, even if you're out for a long time, the wine was mutter, because he thinks you could come any minute, so he's not going to touch the wine. Says the Gemara, Tzricha, I need three machlokes of the same idea. The same idea regarding Rav Shimon ben Gamliel and the Rabbanim. The Itane Nachri, if we just say the first case, the Sama, but the case of the Goy, Dilma Asav Chazale. Maybe the guy is nervous, maybe he will come see me. That's why the wine is mutter. Ava Bakaram Ebesvina, the case of the wagon of the ship. Ema, even if you told the guy that, hey, I'm coming right back, or I'm not going to be long, maybe the guy is going to move the ship, and nobody can see him, and then do what he wants to do and touch the wine. Itani, vitani, bekarna besvina. If we tell me the case of karma svina, the reason why that's mutar, b'shem desavar, because the guy is afraid to move the ship, because dimlo also be'urcha achritzi v'koi agida v'chazale. Maybe because the guy thinks that the Jew is going to come in another direction or stand on a hill and see me, so I'm not going to do that. Aval nachri bechanuse. But if you leave a guy alone in this shop, Ema, the guy will say, I'm going to close the door and do whatever I want, even though he thinks that his boss is only leaving for 5 minutes. But since he could easily close the door and do what he wants, maybe in the case of the storekeeper, the wine is aser. Kamash malam, the wine is mutter. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabba Babachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabba Babachana said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, the machlokes between Rav Shimon Gamliel and the Rabbanim is Bilshel Sid. If the type of seal that was on the barrel is called Sid, I think it's lime, which is white. Aval Bilshel Tit, if it's made up of tit, which is clay, so there clay is dark, right? But if you leave clay out for a long time, it turns white. So divrei hakol, then you give him more time. It takes because the shear would be, he would have to make a new covering of tit, and let it dry, because the tit, even if he would be very reluctant to make a hole in the tit and cover it, because when he covers it, it's obviously there was a hole there, because the cover of the hole is going to be black, and the tit of the rest of the cover is white. So the Yid is going to know that he did something. Meisvei, let me ask you a question. Amar Shimon Gamliel lechachamim. Shimon Gamliel said to Chamim, like situmen nika bein milmala bein mata. Shimon Gamliel says, what do you mean? Every Yid will know that a hole was made. You took the cover of the. You could look from the top, and you could look from the bottom. You can see that the goy made a hole. So what's the problem? The guy will never do such a thing. So that's what Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said to the Chachamim. So Amrit, if you say Bishlam Bishal Tit Machlokes, they're arguing Bishal Tit, and the Chachamim say that even with Tit, even if the cover is made of tit, of clay, the Rabbanan still say the shear is for a hole. That's why Shimon Gamliel says, how could you say by tit the guy is going to play around with it when he makes a hole? you could see it on the top of the. You can't really cover it so fast. You can't hide your tracks by putting back clay, because it's going to be black. So you can see it from the top of the cover and from the bottom. Eliyamet b'shel sid. But if you're going to say that the machlokes is by white, by lime, and the cover was made out of lime, machlokes bishlam mata yediyah. When you cover up the hole, so you can see it. If you turn it over, you can see somebody tampered with the seal. Alalamala, but on top, hola yedi, you can't really tell because lime is white. So when you make a hole and then you cover it with lime, so it matches nicely with the rest of the cover. So what did Rabbi Shimon Gamliel say? Oh, Rabbanan, the Yid can see that somebody tampered with his cover even from the top of the barrel. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, who delete. If you're talking about the cover was made out of tit, situmim nikra, beimil mata, beimil malo, beimil mata, beimil mata, whether you're on top, on the bottom. So the Yid will know somebody tampered with his seal. Shall sit, Kamri say, even if the seal was made of lime, the Reb Shimon Gamliel says, even I could grant you that on the top of the seal, you're not going to be able to see anybody tampered with, because he could close it up and make it match. Lamata miya yadia. If the Yid will pick up the seal of the cover, he'll see that somebody tampered with the bottom of his seal, so he'll know that the guy did something. Rabbanan will say, "Even the lamala yadia," since on top it looks like nobody did anything. Lemasik adate the apef v'chazle. The Yid's not going to turn it over and see what's done on the bottom. Iname, or I can tell you, Zimnin decholam. Maybe the guy did such a good job that even from the bottom, it looks so good that you won't be able to tell that it's tampered with. So the bottom line is the machlokes between Rav Shimon Gamliel and Rabbanan is the reason why Rav Shimon Gamliel requires you more time, because if the guy did a hole, the Yid will be able to see somebody tampered with his barrel from the top. He won't be able to see it, but he might be able to turn it over and see, oh, it was tampered with. Somebody made a little hole, so he'll be able to catch the guy. But Rabbanan hold that the Yid may forget to do something like that, and therefore the Rabbanan went strict and said, if the guy had enough time to make a hole, then the barrel of wine is asar. Amar Rava said, halacha ka Shimon Gamliel, concludes the Gemara, the halacha is like Shimon Gamliel, hoyel tanan stomach kavasei. Since we have a stam Mishnah, our Mishnah seems to imply that's the shear of the time is that the guy should have enough time to undo the cover. The Tanam, we learned in the Mishnah, but if the Yid told the guy that was invited to his house, having mazik v'shoise, af al shal dul asi, whatever in the wine cabinet is aser. Chavis psuchas asuris, stumas mutares, kidei sheyiftach v'yigay v'sigay. So the Mishnah seems to be anonymously voting with Rav Shimon ben Gamliel's opinion. Says the Gemara, Pshita, isn't that obvious? Mahu Desema, I would think that the cooler of Shimon Gamliel. Of course, it's. I would think that it's not that it's the Mishnah is anonymously voting like Rav Shimon Gamliel. It's Rav Shimon Gamliel talking. Katana law, Kamash Malam. That's why Rava told us. That's why Rava said the halacha is like Rav Shimon Gamliel. Like we said, that if you told the guy that you're going to be out for a while, then in order to asa the wine, you need a longer share. I've been saying that share is the amount of time it takes for the guy to, secretly take off the cover of the wine and plant the new one and seal it and make it dry, which, could take an hour or two. So that would be the time that you have to be gone in order to asa the wine. Okay, we will stop over here.